So let's go live, but I'm going to make sure that we're live. I've only done a few of these things.
We're learning together.
Yeah, we are. Thanks for coming on. I have a question about your schedule and everything. So they don't tell me yet until the questions happen. All right. Yeah, it looks like live now. Thanks for coming on. Oh, yep, we are live. And I'm going to mute myself because there's a delay from like what we say to what goes on YouTube. There is a little delay.
Okay.
But well, we're live, man. So do we tell people? I don't know how I'll give some background. No Ohio State. I'd rather have Michigan Wolverines, but I have no, I'm way out here Pac-10 style.
Yeah. Ugh.
I know.
USC. USC.
Yeah, they're all right. Reggie Bush, all that scandal, that stuff was fun.
They need new jerseys.
Yeah, they're kind of
plain. They need to go with a flat. If they just change their helmet to a flat color instead of the gloss.
We have OJ. You know, OJ went there. Marcus Allen. Yeah. So I'll give everyone, because this is a surprise to everyone. There's already a whole bunch of messages right now. So we just went live. It's probably because your name recognition. I mean, how many million? You guys got millions. So how I got into the case, I'll just say, like, you guys did something on my cousin. I didn't hear of True Crime Garage. I didn't listen to True Crime. I'm like, well, first this other podcast came out and they did a whole season on my cousin. It was like 8 episodes. I thought it was too long, but then I just put my cousin's name in the search, and then you guys came up, and I listened. I'm like, wow, these guys are good. And then I saw you guys have a Tupac episode. You guys don't know more about Tupac than me. I grew up listening to Tupac and Nirvana, so I listened to those ones. Tupac, the one with Kurt Cobain, and then I started getting all this stuff about Delphi. I'm like, what the heck is Delphi? I'm not trying to be true crime stuff, but you guys just like locked me in, and so I'm listening to your shows and listening to the one with Skip on it. I listened to all your stuff. I went back, and so now I'm a fan. Crazy how it works out.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think that, the last 5 years, people don't want to say that they're a fan of true crime genre or a fan of a case, but I mean, that's essentially, what it is. But I think it's a lot of the cases, the case finds you. I don't think you find the case. And I think it all depends on how you were raised and what your social background was and how you relate to the cases. I mean, there's some cases that Nick's excited about and he wants to cover and he's really passionate about it. And the whole week, it's just like, I don't get his enthusiasm, towards it, because it's just not. And then there's been other cases where I've thought, wow, this is really interesting. And he's not so into it. So.
Well, what you guys do is you give, right? So I'm with my family and being part of it on the unfortunate side of true crime. My wife asked me, like, how does it feel that there's podcasts about, about your cousin? I'm like, I get it. It makes me feel good that people are talking about him. And you guys referenced the GQ article that was written about him. And this was a few years ago, so I don't expect you to memorize everything from it. But like the attempt you guys make to be as factual with the information that you have at your disposal and telling the story, I appreciated that. And I sent you guys the email, and I sent to Nick, like, hey, I appreciate like the way you covered it, because other people covered it and they weren't as factual and they didn't, tell the story. They used different weird information, a lot of rumors and stuff. So yeah, definitely appreciated that.
Yeah, sometimes Nick will stay away from rumors, and then sometimes those rumors become really important information in the case. So, you have to kind of, at your own discretion, how much you want to add speculation to what you're saying. But I think Nick does a good job of trying to fill out the time time frame that we're recording with actual information and not just a lot of, let's spend an hour of talking about what possibly could have happened. But it's also difficult too. I mean, I think most people have been very respectful because they know that we're just trying our best and trying to put out the best information we can and trying to tell their story as truthful as possible. So then people might, especially in an unsolved case, that people might come forward and actually develop new leads in the case, which is a great feeling too when law enforcement contacts you later and says, hey, by the way, you guys covered this case, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we've got hundreds of tips. And those, you're directly responsible for those tips because there's nothing been going on in the case for the last 10 years. And then you cover the case, and then all of a sudden that department's phone lines are blowing up. And so that's a good feeling.
Yeah, for sure. And hey, I wish you guys covered my cousin every week, right? Because that means his name's out there. We like hearing about him. And so there's that too. So okay, so let's bring it into close. Like, we've probably been in communication the last 2 weeks. So I have some questions for you. The first question is, how do I explain to my wife when I'm on the phone at 1 a.m. with the dude I met online and we're whispering to each other at 1 a.m. and my wife walks down like, who the hell are you talking to? And what are you guys talking about?
Yeah, why
you have any advice for that? Because my wife got a little weird the other day. Like, what are you doing?
You have to like hold the phone. I don't even know him. I don't know him.
We're just talking about weird stuff. I don't know.
No, the one that got me in some trouble was, I don't know if I should name names, but it was a boyfriend of a missing person. And a lot of people wanted to do interviews with him and talk, and he was kind of coming at me on social media, and I basically said, look, I don't know who you are, and I don't have an issue with you, and here's my number if you want to talk. And we ended up talking for like 8 hours.
Holy God.
And I pace when I talk on the phone, so
get your steps.
I think I got like 35,000 steps that day. It was insane. But when you've been reading about a case for years and watching documentaries about that case, and you get to talk to somebody that knows, they're privy to information that, a lot of these cases, I mean, if you could, take the Delphi case, for example, if you could go and through their rooms and look at pictures that they have, and because all we're getting a lot of times, everybody calls it this true crime genre, but it's really should be called what we know so far, or what they're willing to tell us, because some of these families don't want to talk to the media. So the media just paints a picture the best way they can. That's why we hear all the time, this girl was so nice. She lit up the room. She made everybody feel special. And the joke I've heard lately is, if you light up a room and you make everybody feel special, you should watch your back.
Yeah, because the evil is after the good.
Yeah, but I also think it's a little farce. I mean, look, nobody wants to talk ill about the dead, but some of these people that do become victims, sometimes there's a reason for that. Maybe they were a good person, but maybe they ended up dabbling into drugs, and then that became an addiction, and then they started hanging out with the wrong people, or they continue to date abusive people. And if you say too much of that, people will be like, you're victim blaming. It's not victim blaming, if you're saying, look, that's a dangerous situation to put yourself into. It'd be similar to like somebody going, well, this street has the highest crime rate on it. Let me drive through that neighborhood every day. You see what I'm saying? And it's like, so sometimes you feel bad because you don't want it to come off as victim blaming, but sometimes you have to point out like that this person's lifestyle was maybe a little more risky than others.
Right. And you've covered I don't know how many, I'll let you answer how many cases, but just for, you have such a catalog of knowledge. So when we're talking about specific case, you're like, well, there's other case this happened. There's other case. I'm like, well, you're like an encyclopedia. So about how many, 2 questions, how many cases have you covered? And like, what does your week look like? Because we're talking, it was like 4 a.m. for you. And you're like, I got to be up at 8 a.m. because I got a case to study. Like you have like a regimen. It's no joke. So how many cases and like, what's your week look like to learn about all these cases?
I think that's the other problem too. And somebody emailed me the other day because we covered a case, and she said there was a 4-part documentary on TV about the case, and she's like, I listened to your guys' episode, and you guys had so much more information than even the documentaries had. And all I could think was, that's hilarious, because those documentaries are done by a production company. They normally have 10 people working for them or 30 people working for them. And then they sell it to a network, and there's another 20 people working on the project, and they spend all this money, and they research these cases for months upon months, and we have 6 days. And I know that, obviously we don't have to film and do all the visual stuff, but we have 6 days to put together as much information as we can. And so a lot of it, like on Mondays and Tuesdays, we record. This is when me and Nick record. Mm-hmm. And some of that is like, we might record a bunch of intros and outros for the show, because what we realize is once we get done with the case, that to like have the music fade out and come back in and be like, thanks for listening. And,
yeah,
make sure you check out our website. Like sometimes you're just not in the mood to say that. So it'd be like, the music would fade out and would fade back in and be like, all right, see you guys next week. Try not to be depressed, so we started recording all the intros and outros separately. And then obviously we, to keep the show going and to allow us to do what we're doing, we have contracts with ad agencies, so we have to then record ads and things like that.
Man, it's stressful. Oh, go ahead.
So I was going to say Monday and Tuesdays, and those are my longer days. And then, Nick's probably already done a little prep work on the case already. And sometimes, I'll talk to him, Monday night, he's already kind of getting together all his information. And then he's really deep into it by Wednesday. Well, on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I'm still editing. I'm still putting together stuff to put out on social media. I'm still finishing up the last case. And so there's some weeks that, I try to work Monday through Friday, but there's a lot of weeks that I have to put a couple hours in on Saturday and a couple hours in on Sunday. So
it's a full-time job, and it's stressful. I'm only looking at one case, and it's like emotionally draining. There's, other YouTubers you become, close with, and, then there's drama. It's like, oh gosh, I just want to like focus on this case, not to think about, the families and everything that's going on. It wears on you. So, but I do have to ask a question. So how is it, like, I know you do all the work and Nick takes all the credit for it. Like, how does that make you feel?
Yeah. No,
I know Nick just pops in and like you do all the work, and he's taking credit for it, man.
Nick just reads off the script I give him.
Yeah, I knew it.
No, the funny thing about that is when we first started, like it was supposed to be a little more off the cuff and a little more 2 guys sitting in a room talking about a crime,
drinking a beer.
Yeah. But what happens sometimes is that you start talking about the case and then you realize you haven't set up the information correctly. So somebody won't be able to follow what you're saying. And it's also, if you listen to Off the Record, which is our bonus show, Nick does a lot of uhs and ums. I just did one there. More so than I do live. So on the Off the Record show, which I don't edit as much, you can kind of see some of his stammers and some of his imperfections, which I clean those up every week. So if he sounds really good, like it's all you. It's partially me, but he's just, and I think he evolved into this. I mean, when we first started, like we'd get together, and I think sometimes he was shocked by if he thought he knew the case really well, and I was tossing out information he's never heard before, is when he'd be like, "Oh," and then you could see like his wheels were turning. Like, I got to step up my game. And if I'm going to take this serious, I want to put out better information and more information than anybody else. So, and I think he does that very well. I mean, there's some episodes that, I mean, this last week, he's probably talking 75% of the time.
Yeah, but you guys are a dynamic duo, so it's good. Your guys' thing. A lot. My favorite podcast, and I'm not just saying that. I'm not always nice to you, so I'm
Right.
like, you know what? I'm mad. I told my wife because I felt bad after I don't know why I felt, probably because it's so late. I'm like, I was disappointed in the Atlanta murders with you. I'm like, why would I tell you that? I'm trying to critique you. I wasn't. I was just, what I was doing. It was love, right? It was all love.
Well, no, but I'm that guy. I did a cruise one time with the band was Lifehouse.
Yep, I know them.
And I watched they performed on the Lido deck, which is like the outside, like the main deck of the cruise ship. And it was just this awesome performance. But out of the whole performance, the drummer was one of the best like rock drummers I've ever seen live ever. And later on that night, we're in a casino bar drinking with, the drummer and some of his friends. And the whole night I kept on thinking, go up and tell him how awesome the set was. But don't tell him that you're not a big fan of Lifehouse. And the first thing out of my mouth was, hey, I'm not that big of a fan of Lifehouse, but your drumming was amazing.
Yeah. Why would you say that?
Yeah.
But, let's get into people. So we will talk about Delphi. There are some questions about CrimeCon that I'm already seeing going through the chat. So are you going to be there? What is CrimeCon? I don't know. I've never been to it. Could you kind of explain and then let us know if you're going and if you're going to speak or have a booth or what's going on with that?
Yeah, so CrimeCon, it started a few years back. The first one was in Indianapolis. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Well, actually, I think it starts on Friday, but most of the speakers get in Thursday night. They do a lot of events. Sometimes they premiere documentaries. A lot of crime authors will be there. A bunch of true crime podcasters will be there. Some people do live podcast events, and like I did one in London, England, and they did a whole thing on scent dogs and how that worked, or like drug dogs or cadaver dogs, and they talk about fingerprints, or they talked about lie detector tests, and so there's a bunch of different displays or different events that you can go to. The last year they had one on a guy that was a sketch artist and how he goes around and does sketches and what that means. So the first year we did it, Nick was already planning on being on vacation. And we didn't know what it was. So we went, and at the time, CrimeCon didn't really think that the podcast like really mattered much. So they put like all the podcasters in like this little tiny room, and every now and then they'd let people in to meet you. And it was a pretty cool experience. And then they invited us back. And out of the 4, I think we've done, or 5 that we've done every single one that they've had. But we've only done one live event, and that's because our buddy Bob Ruff, which does Truth and Justice, was doing a live event, and his guest wasn't going to make it in time. So we stepped in. But it's kind of been our thing to just not do any event. We just go there to simply meet the people that listen to our show and tell them thank you and spend time with them and have a drink, talk about cases. And yeah, so that's basically what we've done every time. So people are always like, and then weirdly, there's a special like meetup every Saturday. of CrimeCon. I mean, which I don't organize, but I find the place to go and then I tell everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's like everybody's invited as long as you find out where it is. And that's just kind of been like something that it's now a tradition that happens every year, but we didn't like plan to do that, so.
Right.
But yes, CrimeCon is next week. A lot of my podcaster friends are going to be getting in on Wednesday and staying until like Monday. I'm not getting in until Thursday, and then I'm leaving Sunday because I have too much on my plate to just sit around and drink the whole weekend. So
yeah. So you're gonna be there all of the days, and will you have like, is it a booth set up, or how could people like interact with you?
yeah, so it's once you pay to get in, it's once they have time frames of when the podcasters will be at their stations, and people will come in and they want to take a picture or hug you or get an autograph or something. It's very strange because it's not like people in my normal life go, "Hey, you're the captain. Can I get a picture?"
Right. Right.
It's quite strange.
Yeah, it's like you put on a different cape or something, and now you become this different person, different persona.
Yeah, and I think because I played in bands my whole life, that like would have that happen a little bit, but I've never really thought too much about it.
And is there a way I listen to some of your music. I forgot how I did that. Where is some of the music that you make?
Spotify
Spotify.
and SoundCloud, and I have a website for it all called CaptainFatHands.com.
Nice. Check it out. I like it.
Because
I
I
have a
did
music
for a
background too.
while. My that was like my career. I taught lessons. I gave lectures. I would do clinics. I'd play on records. So, which is cool. It's very similar to like the podcast life. Is some days we're recording, some days I'm editing, some days I'm just reading books. So it's like every day, or it's a different adventure. Or like this morning, I was folding T-shirts.
Oh yeah,
And
just
shipping
like
out
for a
T-shirts.
band going on a tour.
Yeah, it's very similar. So, and it's weird because I know, and I won't name them because I don't want to share their business, but there's some other podcasters out there that you only see those two people, but they have four people writing and researching for their show. And I've never had anybody write or research for me. I've came up with every bad dick joke on my own.
You didn't need help with that?
I didn't need help with that. I didn't need, or one guy told me, "I bet you don't have a writer because you don't need help ruining the show."
Dang.
But but now Nick has, he does have somebody that he's worked with for the last few years. Very smart lady that, especially if we get contacted by the family, and maybe the mom's willing to talk, the dad's willing to talk, the brother's willing to talk. She might do all those interviews and put them together for him so he can then saves him some time. But as far as somebody sitting down and writing a script or anything for him, he's never, I mean, and I also don't know which episodes he's worked with somebody else on or that he's just done himself. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah. That's
And
cool.
again, a lot of the stuff that Nick uses her for is if maybe it's a police officer that's wanting to talk about a case. Well, if she can do the interview and take a bunch of notes, that gets him to a way better starting point than having to schedule all that and do. And that's the other problem with interviews, and this is, you go, how about Wednesday? And they're like, no, how about Thursday? Nah, how about and so you might spend hours just to get the
pin it.
person on the phone.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we figured it out and we're doing the interview.
Well, you're persistent.
I'm like, dude, what time? We don't got to talk about this or this, but what time?
I actually told my the guy that helps me with T-shirts. So the only like our team, we have no like permanent person, but like we have like merchandise people that help us design shirts, or but that's what they do for a living, is or I have a guy that prints the t-shirts. I mean, I feel like he's a part of our team, but he's not on my payroll. We have two people on our payroll. So when Nick goes, our little garage show, I think people think we're being sarcastic, but it's still just us two. And then every year we're like, maybe we should just hire a team because this is a lot of work.
Yeah, you could get burnt out for sure. And it is my little experience with it. Yeah, it could be very stressful. So your favorite case that you covered so far, and all the case, and not favorite as in you like it, but just intrigued, I think is a better word for it, or something just piqued your interest where you just keep coming back to it or thinking about it kind of on your off time.
Yeah, I've always been quite confused by the West Memphis 3 case. I think there's also the fascinating thing about that case is the documentaries, because documentaries are supposed to be made where you're just telling what information you uncover. And the way people make documentaries today is that they actually come up with a theory,
like an agenda first.
Yeah, and so that's not a documentary, and people need to be very careful about that, as far as where you're getting your information from and why you're getting your information from that person.
Yeah, because with that case, there's one documentary that's like against the 3, and there's another one that shows like both sides of it. So it depends which one you watch to kind of form an opinion on.
Yeah, and that one you kind of see unfold. So the West Memphis 3 is one that I think about a lot. We never covered the Adnan Syed case.
Oh yeah,
but that's a case that I think a lot about. Obviously, the Delphi. I mean, as far as like being proud of something, I've always been proud of. We covered Boys on the Tracks. 2 boys that are murdered around I believe it was in Arkansas, and it's probably drug related and government related, and it's there's a bunch of eyewitnesses that got killed that were surrounding the case, and it leads to like higher government officials. And but the reason why I was proud of it is because nobody heard of the case. It wasn't that popular. I mean, some of these cases that we cover, there's 100 podcasts about them, and obviously when we started there wasn't hundreds of podcasts yet. But I'm also real proud that we were one of the first, if not the first, to talk about the Delphi case in a national light.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I can't. Maybe there was a one before you, but I think when I looked at kind of the archives, you guys were the ones who kind of put it on the map and made a lot of people interested and intrigued, and made people want to go like, I want to go see the video of this guy on the bridge, and then that intrigued them even further.
Well, again, I'd have to give a lot of credit to the NFL, because the NFL was taking money and putting billboards all over the country. And because of their actions to do that, we went, wait a second. Why are they doing this? And why haven't we ever heard of this case? So we dove into it. And, but again, I mean, it's, we didn't know much about the case, obviously, when we covered it. But our agenda was real simple. Talk about what we think we know. And especially in that case, at the time, there was a sketch, and there was I think it's the sketch and a photograph. And we thought, well, that's enough. If you can share that on social media with hundreds of people, but it's weird. And I think you probably know this too, is like there's a lot of people that think like that this case becomes their case. Or that they like learn information and then they put that information out, and then if somebody else talks about it, they're like, it's my information, they stole it. And it's like you don't own the facts of this case.
Right.
So
So have you been to Delphi? Do I understand that correctly? Like, have you went and talked to anyone down there? I haven't.
No, so I have a handful of locals that I talk to probably every other week about certain things, all different levels of different positions within the community. Weirdly enough, though, is I went to the trails a few years before the murders.
Really?
Hey, the captain.
I know. We were playing phone tag earlier.
Well, that just proves that we're not the same person.
Yeah, there we go. I'm gonna have to get you guys on at the same time.
Yeah,
just
well,
show
see,
look, two different people.
Just have him text again, and we'll see what happens. I'll keep my hand up.
Oh, did you? Yeah, not to go off. Did you see the video he made explaining to people that your guys are two different people? It was hilarious. It was great. He just put it out. I'll send it to you if you haven't seen it.
Well, I feel bad for. Well, in fairness, when we started the show, we didn't think we were actually going to put out an episode.
Right.
So when I decided that would be the captain for this fictitious show that we're never going to put out,
yeah.
Now I'm just stuck with it, So it's his fault that he picked the captain. And also, my question to him is, why would you pick the captain when you already know?
So his is from The Exorcist. Captain Howdy was that was his inspiration to start. And
well, then he should change his name to Captain Howdy.
Oh yeah, it was Captain Howdy. I don't know. You guys are both awesome. So whatever you guys want to do, I know the difference. It was just hard to explain to my wife this morning. I'm like, I'm gonna talk to the captain, and then I'm gonna talk to the captain. All right, babe. She's like, are you going on a boat? What are you saying to me right now? I'm like, never. I'll explain later. I gotta go.
Well, does that captain own a boat?
Oh, I don't know.
Because I do.
Very,
very small boat.
Yeah, we'll have to all get together and do stuff that. Yeah, that'd be fun.
My boat's so small that three of us probably could not fit in the boat. That's how small the boat is.
The little boat.
But I was able to. I watched a couple things that the captain has put out.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, who do you watch on? Do you watch YouTube stuff? Some of us weirdos on YouTube. Is that something you check out? Do you even have time to?
I try not to be honest with you. I used to check out every true crime show that came out. Try to listen to one episode, just get whatever feel for whatever they're doing. And then it's just a time thing, and also you have to be invested into the case that you're working on.
Right.
Wednesday was a bad example. Normally I'm pretty on the ball, or I can tell people, no, I don't want to talk. And I think, did we talk Wednesday?
Or you're going to say, and then until I called, and when you're.
Well, no, it was I think I was on the phone with you for at least 2 hours.
Yeah, we talked for 2 hours, and then we talked for 4 hours a few days later, I think.
Yeah, and so I was on the phone for 6 hours on Wednesday, starting at 9 o'clock. So I didn't get off
chatterbox. You're in the right profession for sure.
No, it's I didn't want to be on the phone that whole time. I think, especially with the Delphi, anytime that somebody that you have respect for is reaching out, it's not so much about getting the information. Sometimes I'm nosy Nancy and I want to know what's going on, but sometimes they just want to process the information out loud with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to do that when I can. But I mean, I've seen a lot of them, Sleuth Intuition, Captain. I've seen, now I didn't see your channel before until I saw, I think you were talking with Sleuth Intuition on something. Matt Sullivan, he puts out some stuff that I've watched.
But now you watch all my stuff. Now it's you can't stop watching it.
Now I can't stop watching it. Yeah. I'm this guy's a genius.
Wow. So I don't know how to point on maps. I'm not very good at that. I get confused sometimes, but that's another story. So I'm going to ask you about the Subaru jacket. You want to talk about that? You don't have to because it came up.
Well, what I was told and what I was presented with is that that there was a type of jacket that Subaru would give out to some of the employees. There's also a jacket that they could order, and that there was orders done. This was all contacted through a merchandise lady. I don't know. I'm saying a merchandise lady. I don't know what the correct term is. Some of these companies they go through like basically a promotional company. So they'll sell the jacket. The jacket will be then sold, sent to the embroidery company. They embroider it with Subaru or Chrysler or GMC, and then they send it to the factories, and the workers could use that. So I was told, almost without a doubt that it was that type of jacket. I was never told it was a Subaru jacket. I was just told it was that type of jacket.
Like an Anorak, I think is what it looks like to me. Anorak brand.
And I used to know the model number, and I gave up on knowing the model number. But so once I saw that and it made some sense to me, I started looking for known locations that had a lot of employees around that area that actually would use those. I couldn't find a connection to the meat packing plant, but I did find a connection to the Subaru plant. So then it was, well, now I need to find one that actually exists in the wild. And once I found one of those, I thought that was okay. Now I'm getting somewhere. And then the question was, do I put that information out? Well, I never know when we're going to cover the Delphi case for certain, because there has been some information that has come out, and Nick has looked at it and just thought it wasn't enough to discuss, or some maybe information that he wasn't that interested in. But then maybe we get a lot of emails from listeners, and then we go, okay, we probably should discuss this, because some people are counting on us to take that information and dissect it a little bit. So we didn't have any plans to put out anything with Delphi, but I thought this was an important piece of information and that maybe you could get somebody talking. Where I messed up on was I also found other locations that this jacket could have been used for employees. So I think where I messed up on is I should have put it out in a way of saying that I believe it's this type of jacket. I did find one that matches a Subaru jacket. And then what happens too is all these people have these like random theories or speculations, or sometimes they just want to try to discredit you. And the post actually didn't even get put on other social media platforms because there were so many negative comments. And there was negative comments from people close to the case and close to the victims. And that's not my job I'm not trying to hurt people in any way.
Right.
Also, like, I'm not one to I don't like to talk shit because I don't like people to talk shit to me. But I'm also,
you talk some shit to me. Go ahead.
but I'm just also just not that guy. I'm not.
Right. You're not.
Well, I'm not one to talk shit, but I'm also not the guy that's going to just let you talk shit.
Right.
So yeah, it's but then also you have to think, and we've talked about this before. You have to constantly think about, well, why are you doing this? Why are you putting this out? And I think we all have good ego, bad ego, and I think sometimes my bad ego wins.
Yeah,
because it's also not my job to if I know something for a fact, it's not my job to try to prove to you that it's a fact.
Right. It's right. So we put out information that we hear, and in the in the description, I put, this is speculation. This is how I make sense of it. I'll be upfront. Law enforcement never said this, but this is how I'm trying to make sense of it. And if it helps anyone out there try and make sense of it or help them trigger a thought from something that happened in the past. We're like, oh, maybe that was something, maybe that was suspicious, that wasn't. That's all we're trying to do, and to keep people engaged. And Captain Howdy said this really well, like, you have to, has to be some entertainment value. If you want to have an audience to be able to share information, there has to be some entertainment value, and it's not exploiting anyone or anything. I mean, some people do, don't get me wrong, but it has to be somewhat entertaining.
Yeah, and the cases like the Delphi, and it's sad, I think, that it's got to this point. But there are like cases like Mara Murray where they live actually too much online. There's maybe too many podcasts about it. There's maybe too many YouTube channels about it. But again, it's I'm not one to tell somebody what to do with their life.
Right.
And also you can't assume that they're wasting time, because there could be a guy on YouTube that gets 10 views per video that uncovers something that nobody else was able to uncover.
Right.
So that, the subscriber count or the view count is not indicative of who's actually correct or has the best information.
Right. That's a great point. Yeah,
and I think, I actually talked about this a lot into like 2016, 2017, when we started the podcast, that I've always thought that there was especially with the true crime community, that there's always been a sense of loneliness. And so a lot of these people that are lonely, that are diving into these cases, you know, sometimes I'll see a YouTube channel that's streaming, live every day. I think to myself, that's a little excessive, but also there might be, there's been times that I've been lonely and start Google searching the Delphi case and start watching videos and maybe watch some live videos. So I think some of that too is like some of these channels are building a community they have of like-minded individuals.
Mm-hmm.
But this case, just like some of these other cases, like people want to be the king of the information, like, and the truth is law enforcement knows more than all of us combined. And the guys that are smart, the guys that are intelligent, they have all said to me, well, I kind of think it's this person, or I'm leaning towards this idea. But if they arrested somebody else and they could tell you why they arrested them, most people would change their mind very quickly.
Right. Because there's so little information about it. And yeah, we could get a little bit more to Delphi, just any thoughts that you have. But talking to him, like, holy, a lot, a whole bunch. I thought I knew a lot. But yeah, it from, you've been studying it for 5 years. And just like, kind of, what have you learned over the course of time about the case? Like, what are your thoughts currently with all the Keegan Klein stuff, Tony Klein? Like, do you have any new thoughts, old thoughts that have changed, or just what's your thoughts on it?
I feel like in the last month, I've learned more than maybe I did in the last 5 years. But it just makes it more gray. I feel like I've learned more gray areas. And
so, like, what do you mean? What have you learned in the last month? You don't have to specific, but is it just from talking to people, from reading transcripts, from what?
Different people. The transcripts are really difficult because, one, we don't know what the cops are saying to, and everybody keeps trying to correct me. I say Keegan, and everybody says no, it's Kagan. Either way, the guy's a douchebag.
Yeah, call him whatever. Call him douchebag. Who cares? Yeah.
Like, either way, his face should be set on fire, and we should put it out with a shovel. I mean, he, I wouldn't mind like putting, some kind of food on his cock and dipping him into to a bowl of piranhas or something. I mean, that's like he's he's one of the worst people in the world. I don't like anybody that crimes against children.
Right. They're the worst of the worst, man.
But we just don't know if what law enforcement was saying to Keegan, if he was, if they were truthful to him, and then on top of that, he's a liar.
Mm-hmm.
He's a pathological liar, and there's so much evidence of that. And there was some numbnuts that was breaking down the transcripts and saying that, like, when they were asking him about Ron Logan, like, that he had to know who that person was.
Oh,
When they asked him about Ron Logan, he had to know who he was, and he has to be following the case. What? He has to be following the case? Why? Well, he has to know who Ron Logan is? Why? Because what that guy, that investigator is doing, quote unquote, is he's putting his own knowledge into Keegan. Keegan is a guy that sits in a room and tries to get 12-year-olds to send nude pictures while he beats off all day. Do you think he's really watching the news? Do you think he's really out about in the community and gives a shit what's happening to other people? He might have not even known that he was talking to Abby or Libby, because he might have only recognized the conversation through their profile picture.
right. And he's such a liar. Like you're saying, it's hard to tell when he was being honest, when he wasn't. Sound like a whole bunch of lies, and then maybe sometimes you tell the truth, but it's
But you
so
don't
hard.
know, and
You
the
don't
other
know.
thing too is, a lot of people think they're so good at reading individuals, and the truth is we're just not.
And we're not, because they believe the lies themselves. They believe it so much that they'll act like they're telling the truth because they've had lies in their head for so long or thought about it so long, it comes out as natural as if it was truth.
Well, the transcription becomes more difficult to read through and to decipher from, because it's text.
Right.
So you don't know what the situation is. So yeah, I just thought it was funny. It's like, okay, well, if this guy, let's just say hypothetically that Keegan had nothing to do with the murders, why would he know anybody that was involved in the case? He wouldn't. And so then there was a time where he's like, if he didn't know, he's just quickly answering to get off the question.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, well, what if you just don't know? If somebody said to me, "Do you know so and so?" and I didn't, no, I don't know him. I wouldn't sit there and go, "Why did you ask me that? Who are they? Tell me who they are. I
Right.
need to
Right.
know who they are." Like, that would come off really suspicious. So I think there's also, um, as much as the guys, and no offense to you, but as much as the guys that are studying these cases, they want to be experts in the case, but they just haven't. They don't either. They might not have the background, or they don't have the training, or But also, again, like you were talking about entertainment value. Sometimes I like watching the shows, maybe not about Delphi, but just about whatever,
Mhm.
where the person is speaking out loud and they're going through their process out loud.
Yeah, it is critical thinking activities. That is something I love, problem solving. And like, if I'm going to spend some time problem solving, how can I help problem solve a case that involves children? But it's like problem solving, the first step is to understand all the data, the information. And since I'm not law enforcement, I don't have that. So I can't even get started with doing that. So that's why it's frustrating. Like, I wish I had more information like everyone else, but I want to try to help. So I want to ask, yeah, so you didn't really know, so you don't know when another Delphi episode, when you guys are going to do one? Just, yeah.
No, like I was telling you, I think it was Monday. I was going over some of the transcriptions, and Nick asked for a different version of the transcription. So I don't know I've kind of just left it alone. I mean, when people that are close to the victims are attacking you online, um, it's I just don't want anything to do with that. And
Yeah.
we're also not the Delphi crime hour, so it's not
Right.
like I know we've covered it a lot of times. Um, But I mean, the first two times we covered it was almost like a nothing burger. It's like we didn't even have any information. So it was really just about getting those pictures out to the public. That's actually what our like mission statement for those two episodes were. Was like, well, if anything, we'll be able to get this picture in front of people. And I think like within I don't know, it's like within 7 days we figured out that those episodes and those pictures went out to almost 1 million people.
Whoa, 1 million people? Now
Yeah,
you're like hitting my numbers. That's what I do, like 1 million people. Just kidding.
1 million people per minute.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Nick's not going to listen to this, right? So I could tell you something, or Nick doesn't watch YouTube, right? I'm just guessing.
I don't know. Well, look, if he's ever on an interview, I don't watch it.
Oh yeah, because you guys have to spend so much time together. Because I'm gonna tell you, he emailed me something. So now I feel like I'm in the middle of you two. Now it's just awkward. So
He wants you to take my place.
no, not that. But I'll just say he's investigating Delphi a little bit. So don't be surprised if you guys have a talk. He didn't say like we're gonna do another one, but he just had it's to see if I had information about something specific, and that was it. It was like one sentence about something, but I'm like, all right. I think it'd be cool if you guys did. Yeah.
Well, and I don't want to make it seem like that he's the ruler of the cases, because he's not. If
I
anything,
am. Yeah.
if anything, I'd probably actually pick probably more of the cases. I'd say probably 70 to 80%. But that's because I'm normally like going. At some point, he'll tell me, "Hey, we're getting a little bit low on cases," and then I'll Google a lot of stuff and get like maybe a paragraph of what the case is about. Then I send it to him, and then he's the one that kind of looks at like, okay, well, is there an anniversary in the case, and where would that make sense? Like let's say there was a 5-year anniversary on the Delphi case. Well, if we have something to put it out, instead of putting something out in January, we might wait till February to put it out.
Mm-hmm.
Or if we know that there's going to be some movement in the case, because a lot of times when there is an anniversary, you'll see it pop up on more news stations.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's just like trying to have the crowd of the community and the public to be as loud as possible in that moment, because that's what creates movement in cases where there is no movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So do you have like some inside information you could share? Anything that you learned about Delphi, or any insight
No.
that maybe not everyone else, not us regular folks, would have? Put you on the spot. You don't have to say anything. Maybe think about it.
Well, what I can say is that if I had to like write a book, right, that just in the sheer amount of what I think I've learned in the last couple months, is that the first 5 years I would have known, let's say maybe 2/3 of that book. And then I think in the last couple months I've learned almost a third. You know what I mean? So it's like, or maybe even more, But again, it's not, but I'm learning more stuff, but it's not making anything clear.
Yeah, it's like the more information comes out, the more confused I am. It's not answering things. It's just bringing more confusion.
Yeah, and then again, it's not. A lot of people will say, "Well, you need to share this stuff because you have a responsibility to do the case." Well, first and foremost, you have the responsibility to yourself. And I know that me and you talked about some information that you're hoping doesn't get out,
Mhm.
and because you don't want your name behind it. But that information is for you to decipher through. And maybe you'll find out that there's a couple pieces what you learned that are you think in your heart is important to share.
Mm-hmm.
And if you feel good about that, then you should share it. There's nothing that I feel like I want to share
Okay.
as far as Delphi. And really it was the jacket, that I had a list of my thought was like that every week I was just going to start putting out like one big thing that I thought I learned. And there was just so much negativity. And I've seen, I don't want to sound all hippity dippity, but it's like I believe in like the powers of the universe and powers of positive thinking and things like that. And I feel like a lot of these cases that have blown up on the internet, they get so much negative energy that the universe is just not going to allow it to be solved. And you see these like YouTubers that like talk like trash to each other, or podcasters that talk trash to each other. It's like, well, first of all, you should have a level of respect for the individual because one, they're taking the time out of their lives, their family's lives. They're not making any money doing it for the most part, and they're trying to share information because two girls were murdered.
Mm-hmm.
So there should be a level of respect there. And and some people can argue, well, people are using that to try to make $1. Okay, maybe so. But police officers have to make $1 to go investigate the crime.
Mm-hmm.
The FBI gets paid, so I don't know. Am I making any sense at all?
Yeah, you are.
But there was so much negativity that, like, I was just making a list. I was like at 7 or 8 items that I wanted to put out just to keep the conversation going about Delphi. And there was so much negativity from the first thing that I put out that I was like, I'm not going to do this.
Right. It was nice. It's nice to be able to talk to you about certain things kind of offline where, yeah, I did this interview was a few days ago and I got a bunch of information. It's like, I wish I didn't have all that information. I don't know what to do with it. I don't want to put it out. And maybe some of it's rumor, maybe some of it's not. And it's just
Well,
like,
and what's really funny about that is some of that information, I talked to a source and he was going, wow, man, a lot of what you're saying is stuff I either heard or it's confirming stuff I heard. And then the next person I talked to that I share a couple little tidbits, they're like, no, this stuff is ridiculous. You know what I mean? Uh, so I don't know.
yeah, probably half of it is true, half of it's misunderstanding. But that's with that case. So yeah, to be associated with something that is maybe not right, that's, you're putting your brand on the line. So it's tough. So that's what, like you said earlier, it's just like we're given information, like we get information and now we're going to filter it and then we'll put it out. And some things we're not comfortable putting out, even if we received info because of the possible backlash of things. So I was like stunned for a few. I'm like, man, I want to delete everything. Like, because you hear some heavy stuff and I'm just did a few things like a fraction of how much you've dealt with and all the information I'm sure that gets shared with you. And you're like, well, I didn't even want to know that much. I mean, it's tough.
Yeah, or it really makes you start thinking of the world in a dark place. And again, like the thing is you have to live with yourself. And oh man, the amount of times I've heard somebody say, um, I'm taking a break for a while. And then like 2 days later, they're calling me and we're talking for 2 hours. I'm like, yeah, it's some break you're taking, you know. But it's also tough too because when you're building up that subscription and people are paying attention, obviously one of the reasons why we're sharing this information is to, hopefully get somebody to come forward
Mhm.
and hopefully we solve this case. But it's so funny too because like so many podcasters and YouTubers and will pat themselves on the back for when this case gets solved. And there's some of the same people that have thrown the police under the bus for 5 years. So I couldn't imagine what they saw and
So,
what
yeah.
level of dedication that they might have. And me and Nick talked about this a couple weeks ago, and it actually pissed me off because we're talking about this this guy's son that was abusive. And at one point, he walked in on his son being abusive towards his girlfriend. I don't know how to react because I think if I saw my son hitting a woman, I'd beat the shit out of him, you know. And Nick made some comment that I don't support violence or whatever. I'm like, oh, well, aren't you Gandhi, you know?
Right.
But like, I think I would have a really hard time seeing what happened to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because, like I said, this is not like me trying to be big and tough, but I'm not the guy that you talk shit to because I just don't stand for that. You know, I'd rather lose in the fight 5 times, but to let you know, like, well, you talk shit, so you're gonna have to pay something. I mean, you might beat me up, but you're gonna pay some kind of price. You're gonna be exhausted from whooping my ass. You know,
Your hands are going to hurt something.
yeah, your hands are going to hurt more than they've ever hurt before. But I couldn't imagine. And we don't know certain things about like why they're so locked in. Why aren't they sharing certain things? And it's like, but you don't have to carry that burden,
Right.
you know.
Get the blowback.
Yeah, my father one night was drinking heavily, and I came home. I was in high school, and he was retired. And the first case that he ever worked, this guy went into the gas station this kid went into the gas station to steal money. And the lady at the counter was his best friend's mother. So he knew that she would recognize him. So he stabbed her 40 times. And I came home. It's like one late night, hanging out with my buddies. I think I was like a junior or senior. And my dad was sitting in the dark. There was no lights on in the house. And my dad was sitting in the dark drinking wine, repeating over and over that they stabbed her 40 times. They stabbed her 40 times. They stabbed her, you know what I mean? And that was 25 years earlier,
Wow.
and he's sitting in a room. And that was an adult. I don't know what, 12, 13-year-old, 14-year-old, you know what I mean?
And seeing that stuff, I'm glad there's people like that who could handle that, because I don't think I'm strong enough to see kids who were murdered. Like I couldn't do it. I don't have that type of strength. Maybe I have strength in other areas, but I'm glad there's people who will do that, investigate it, could get that close to the crime scene. That way they could help catch the person, but maybe hand that off to someone else. But I'm not the person who could go in and observe that and just be all right. And not saying people are all right with it once they see it. It's very traumatizing.
Well, Sleuth Intuition, when they solve the case, will be smoking 2 cigars. And he'll have like 2 cigars on. His beard will be like down to here. Sleuth Intuition. Like when they solve the case, it'll be like way down to here. And he'll have like 2 pairs of sunglasses on with big stogies.
I'm there. Once they solve it, we'll have a party. I'll go visit a crime con or something. We'll have a big celebration. I'm down.
Yeah, people always. Well, it's one of the cases that me and Nick have talked about, jokingly, that we'll probably just do an episode where all we do is just like scream, like it finally happened. I mean, there's so much information. There's not many cases that there's a sketch. There's not many cases that there's photographic or video evidence or audio evidence. So, but I think we all helped. Sure, yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're just like, whipping the kids around. And I hope that day is coming sooner than later.
Do you feel like it's getting closer, or do you feel like it's getting further away? Like desperation is happening now, or you think they're onto something?
No, I thought ever since the anniversary, like I just thought Doug Carter's demeanor pointed into the direction that he's feeling confident.
It was kind of giddy on some of the 5-year anniversary stuff.
Well, I also think really smart on there. Do you believe he's in the room during the press conference? We're not going to talk about that. Do you think you've interviewed him before? We're not going to talk about that. And then they ask him, and it wasn't so much of we're just looking for one more piece. It was a lot more about every day we're learning more about you, which makes me believe that they're talking about an individual and not the hypothesis of somebody.
Yeah. The avatar of someone, the profile.
Yeah,
maybe didn't agree on, but we still talked about it.
Well, that's one of the things that you brought up, and it's like, now if somebody told me that the 2019 press conference, because that's one of the things you have to question yourself. 2019 press conference, were they talking about an individual, or were they talking about the idea of an individual? And you lean more towards that they were talking to an idea of an individual. And I get that. I can see that 100%. But if you told me that's the way you felt about the new interview, I would say I don't think that's where they're at.
Right. Yeah. Agreed.
He doesn't sound like, I mean, he even said, like, yeah, he basically said we have some suspects that I'm not going to name publicly, but that we've already named them behind closed doors, is basically what he was saying.
Mm-hmm. So you think they're closer? I'm hoping. I'm gonna be optimistic. I think they're on someone's tracks. They're closer than they were. I think in 2019, I thought it was desperation, and they're just grasping at straws, and it was a Hail Mary. But now with some of the new information, how Doug Carter seemed a little giddy.
Well, and you got to remember what Carter said. He said by the end of the 2 years, roughly the 2 years of somebody's services, every month that we get away from that announcement, we get closer to that deadline. And I just don't think he would have said that. It's almost like he's calling his shot, like he's Babe Ruth or something. And I just don't think he would have done that, because you have a lot to lose,
Yeah, to be so careless, to just say things like that without having some confidence.
Yeah, I agree. I think there was and maybe even a little bit of arrogance, but
yeah, confidence, arrogance, thin line. But I saw a change in demeanor for sure.
Yeah, and it's also difficult too, because people argue with me about this, but Carter's not doing a lot of the investigative work. That's not his role.
Right.
So he is then fed information from the detectives. So then they have to obviously feed him certain information to go on and do an interview. And obviously they did an interview because it marks the anniversary. I was actually surprised that they did anything, because they came out with that announcement months earlier saying that we're not going to be talking about any possible suspects.
Yeah, unless something came up right around the time that, all right, well, we have something new. So, and before I forget, could you do a Skip impression? Because your Skip impression is
Skip Jansen. I'm
putting you on the spot.
So what you're telling me, man, is there's 2 footprints going from the cemetery, the cemetery to Ron Logan's property? He's either the murderer or he's the most unlucky son of a bitch.
I love it. That's great. That's awesome. But yeah,
you're going to tell me. That's my favorite, was when Skip starts going into you're going to tell me. And you remember when you told me that you're going to tell me what Skip looked like?
Oh, I'm like, I know how Skip looks like, and you're like, yeah. I don't know, and I don't want to know.
I was like, no, I don't want to know. So, anyways, I talked to Skip after that, and the bastard sends me a picture. So now I know what he looks like.
Oh, did it ruin it for you?
Kind of.
Yeah,
he's shorter than I thought. Well, no, he's short like I thought.
Yeah, and I would have never guessed he had nipple rings. That was so weird. Just kidding.
Yeah, wears a lot of leather and nipple rings.
Yeah, that's not. Wife's like, who's sending you pictures? Like, oh, it's just
nipple ring man.
Yeah. So
no, but Skip's a great example of somebody that has gone on breaks. But the thing about Skip that's interesting, he doesn't go on breaks.
He wants to. I think he tries to or wants to.
No, I think it's just his ruse. Hey, yeah, I'm going to take some time off. But really, he's working on a couple things. And once he figures those out, he'll come back to you. So it's tough, though, because, and I think it would be a hard job in the sense of, like, if you're signing up, if you're signing up to talk about one singular case, it becomes a lot more difficult on what information do you put out and what information you don't. Because obviously, if you follow our coverage, people keep on talking about this Chadwell guy. Well, we better talk about him and speculate on him for a little bit. The other thing came out. Okay, now we can talk about this. But for you guys, I mean, you guys are probably learning bits and pieces of information every day. And then you have to decide, do I want to even talk about that?
Right. Yeah. And with me, I told myself and my wife, I'm like, I'm going to focus just on one case for 3 months, because any other than that, it'll just be too much. Like I'm very scheduled with my time, the things that I do, running a business. I'm like, if I go into another one, can't. So I'm trying to control myself just to look at one. And I only have till the end of this month. So man, they better celebrate this because they better figure it out so we could celebrate. That'd be awesome.
Well, you have the preliminaries on May 4th.
Yeah, that's interesting. The elections for the new sheriff.
So some people have speculated that there'll be some kind of information that comes out before then to kind of like direct a victory. But I guess we won't know till we see it.
Yeah, like I said, it's a dumb thing that I said, but I'm like, on my last day of being sheriff, I'm going to pick the 5 most likely people who I think it is, and I'm just going to go arrest them, throw them in jail, hold them for 24 hours, and let everyone else deal with it. But I'm like, here's who I think it is. I'm going to arrest them just so I have something that I could be proud of as I retire as sheriff. But probably not going to happen.
Right.
Is there anything else that you want to touch on with Delphi? I know I only cover Delphi. There's a few hundred people in here probably interested in your thoughts on Delphi. I know we did cover a lot, but is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
Well, it's tough. Like I said, there's so much misinformation out there. And then there's a lot of speculation. And sometimes you'll get these people that hear one set of speculation and a different set of speculation. And then all of a sudden that becomes truth. And that's not truth. It's tough.
I repeat things. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I don't know. It's just tough because it's like we said, there's so much stuff that I think is, kind of mind blowing. And just to give you an example, because I feel like I'm just like teasing everybody, but if you have this thing that you've heard about for a long time, but it didn't make any sense, and then and it's just speculation, and somebody shares another piece of speculation with you 2 years later, and that all makes sense, then now that speculation makes sense. It's still speculation. It's not truth. So I think I've learned a lot of speculation or rumors that I haven't heard previous, or they almost kind of confirm that it's actually a rumor. I mean, like if you heard it once, does that make it a rumor, or is it just somebody came up with that off the top of your head? But once you hear it multiple times, you start going, okay, well that's now more of a local rumor. So,
Right. And it could be just that. Like I'll train a bunch of executives, some of the very large companies, and I do a lot of like communication flow, and I'll have executives, very smart people, like play the telephone game, right? Just to show them. And I give them one sentence and it gets screwed up all the time. With 5 people, they can never say the exact sentence. I'll show one person, just one sentence, and never gets to the 5th person the exact same. It's
right.
extremely rare. So you have someone telling a whole story, multiple sentences, paragraphs, and then you have someone else go repeat it. It gets, messy.
Yeah, I'm also starting to lean more towards that. This was probably more vicious than I initially thought it was, which is sad, but also scary. But I mean, I don't want to come off looking like a dick, but in 2017, I really thought the resetting of the phone mattered. And then when you had the guy Maxwell come forward and say that he was one of the girls or both the girls were possibly talking to guys online and possibly an older guy. To me, that felt like it held a lot of weight, and it's something that we haven't really talked about for the last 5 years. And now you have people like Becky and Mike coming and kind of addressing that because it's not so much a rumor anymore. It's starting to seem based off of transcripts and stuff. And again, look, police could be lying. He might have not had any action with them that day. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, they could have been just saying that to get his reaction in there.
Right. But then when they come out and say, okay, well, I guess this was happening. I think my frustration with that was like, when you say something and people dismiss it pretty quickly. Well, you're just a drunk. You're just a drunk guy in a garage, But I always thought that was an important part of the story.
And it seems like it is now.
Yes,
like it is important.
And I think that's the other thing too is like people want to protect the victims. Well, tell me what's wrong with a girl talking to a guy through text when they're 13, 14.
Right. That's normal. That's a 100% normal thing to do.
Nothing wrong with that. And if you say, well, this individual got these girls to send compromising photos. So what? They were kids. Abby and Libby were kids.
Kids being manipulated.
Yes, and they made some mistakes.
Right.
That's okay.
Who hasn't? Yeah, who hasn't at that age made mistakes?
And I think that's the sad thing that we do in just a lot of crimes is we're trying to immortalize them. Well, when you immortalize somebody, you start taking away their faults. And it's not their fault that they got duped,
Right.
Like, and when we don't even know if they met up with the person that said they were going to meet up or if anybody asked them to meet up. What we do know is that this evil individual made contact with them. And it's just like when people say, oh, well, they got like duped going down the hill. How do we know they got duped? What if he just pulled out a gun?
Which I think is likely, but I don't know.
Down the hill. Or what if he pulls out a knife and says, go down the hill? Guess what? If you were in that situation or I was in that situation, we're getting duped as well. And I know they want to protect these little girls, but also, 13 and 14, you're coming into your own. You're becoming more of a woman. So you're going to have these things. And I think they were worried about like, well, what if they were sharing inappropriate text messages with boys? What if they're sharing inappropriate pictures with boys and not wanting that to get out? I mean, you obviously have to protect them, but I don't think think that makes them bad people or bad girls.
Makes them normal.
I think it just means that they were a little immature. That's okay. You're allowed to be immature at 12 years old, 13-year-olds. You know what I mean? So, and I actually think it makes them more human. You know,
right? It makes them more relatable, more heartbreaking. That a normal person, that it could happen to anyone.
Yeah.
So there's a few questions. I don't know the answer to that. How come the FBI can't pull up everything on that phone that was deleted? So I don't know.
Well, it was a reset. It wasn't a deletion. Her phone was reset. Okay. So I think that makes it more difficult.
Yeah, and I think and what was it? I think it was the affidavit. They're like, I think it stated they weren't able to recover everything, maybe from Keegan's phone or on a reset, you're not always able to recover everything exactly.
Right. But just think if she was being groomed by somebody and they started getting suspicious that maybe they would share that information, they would say, okay, well, how about you? You know.
Yeah, that's a good one. This is a good question. I don't know the answer to this one either. Why isn't the lawyer asked either for them to not associate his client Kagan with the Delphi case or charge him with a crime? So no, he doesn't have a lawyer for the Delphi case because he hasn't been charged with anything for the Delphi case yet. So that's why he doesn't have a lawyer for that.
And when technically the media got wrong, both of those announcements were made by ISP. They weren't made. Both of those were made by the ISP and not made by detectives in the Delphi murders. You see what I'm saying? So when they came out and said the detectives in the Delphi murders are looking into, no, ISP is asking you. And then it'd be hard for his lawyers to say, hey, look, you can't question my client about this stuff. Well, we got your information through the murder investigation. So that's why they're going to keep talking to him.
Mm-hmm. All right. Walter has a question. What is the name of the person you think they met on their hike? You're asking about Bridge Guy?
I don't think they actually met anybody on their hike. Like as in a sense that there was if there was a plan to meet somebody, that person they didn't meet.
Right. And there was a friend that was supposed to go meet as well. I don't know how much you want to talk about that, but that kind of shows that I think Libby was a little suspicious because she invited a male friend too. I think maybe for some protection or just to be there. Maybe she met this new person.
Well, there was also rumors that there was other girl classmates of hers that were supposed to meet at the bridge the other day.
Right.
But it seems like from what they were saying, like there was some talk about it the night before, but I believe they also asked to go to the mall as well. Mm-hmm. And they said no. And then it was like, well, what about the park? Okay, well, we'll take you to the park. So, again, I think you could lean one way or the other. To me, it seems like their plans for the day weren't set in stone.
Right. They were fluid. So that's interesting. Yeah. Like how could you put together a plan on the Bridge Guy, the evil side of things where it was 100% sure, but I think it was there for a long period of time. If we'll use the CPS as a timeline, the 12 to 5 and probably give or take an hour either way.
Right.
But it's like, if they said something like, hey, I'll be at the trails all day from 12 to 5. So if you guys make it out there, great. I'll be out there.
I think that's the other problem with these armchair detectives and online sleuthers is this idea that, well, somebody said that they left at 2:00, so therefore they left right at 2:00. And I think anytime somebody's given me information, like especially if somebody said, "Well, I left by 2:00," I'd say, "Well, how do you know?" Mm-hmm. Oh, well, here's how I know, because when I got in the car, I turned on the radio and I have a clock in there and it said 2:05, so I must have left the park by 2 o'clock. See what I'm saying? So there's a lot of these guys online that are like taking every word that somebody's saying and then dissecting it. It's like, well, maybe they were wrong. Or, there was an individual that claimed that they got a phone call on the bridge at 3:19. Okay, what if he actually meant 2:19?
Right.
How,
As you know,
how much does that change the story? Did he misspeak online? And did he misspeak online and then people started looking at him suspiciously and he just doesn't come forward and talks to anybody because maybe he's trying to reestablish his life now. So
right. If we go back and listen to this interview, what we did now, we'll find things that we probably misspoke on or wish we didn't say. Right. So
well,
to
maybe
analyze
you will.
everyone's word, what's that?
I said maybe you will.
Yeah, I don't even know. I don't even own editing software. I don't even need to edit anything because it's just perfect, right?
Editing is for losers.
But yeah, you could say things. Someone corrected me on something. Was like, "Oh yeah, I didn't even realize I said that because I meant one thing, but what came out of my mouth was different about DNA." And when you're like multitasking and stuff, so I guess the point I'm trying to make is, when law enforcement they do an announcement, they say sometimes they have a script, but it doesn't look like they always stick to it. But sometimes you could say things like, I probably shouldn't have said it that way. Like peoples, did I say an S at the end? Now am I implying there's multiple people down there? So people misspeak all the time. Except me and you.
Yeah, I misspeak all the worst is when I can't remember people's names. And then they start thinking like, well, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm like, actually, I know a lot of what I'm talking about. I just can't remember the person's name.
Right. How that just not remembering someone's name just totally disqualifies you from any knowledge.
Well,
the name was the least important thing to me. I was trying to listen to all the details.
The other day I did get a dinner and I sat down at my table and I wanted to watch it. There was this girl was doing or young lady was doing a YouTube video on Delphi, and she kept on calling it Delphi.
Delphi. Like, at least know that.
Right? I'm like, I can't listen anymore. And they grew up in Delphi.
Well, so what case are you guys working on next? What are some things that we could so I'm like, for the two people who hasn't heard about True Crime Garage, how do they listen to you? How do they learn more about?
So you can find everything at truecrimegarage.com. It's again, we run our own website, so if you think it's a little generic, well, that's our doing. Just like sometimes people are like, I ordered a shirt. Why do you only ship them out on Friday? And I'm like, that's the only time I have to ship out shirts. So, but you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Our next week case is kind of a little bit of a departure from what we normally do because we're taking a bunch of crimes that took place in Las Vegas, like shorter story cases, and discussing those over 2 hours because we're going to Vegas for Crime Con.
Oh. Now there's a rumor that a car, I'll say a vehicle at the CPS building might had Nevada plates. And I've confirmed this with a few different people. They kind of looked into it though, and think maybe nothing came out of the car or the vehicle at the CPS. So I think that there is some sort of Vegas connection with this.
Here's my issue. And we were talking about this with some of the information that you received recently, which is there's some fascinating stuff in there. My issue is I want to think about this before you share some of that stuff. Would those answers been different 3 months ago?
So I feel like no, because who I got it from didn't know a lot of some of the other things.
Right.
But you never know. I'm skeptical of everything. So
yeah, I mean, I look, I've heard, and I won't give too much away, but I've heard a lot about it being a truck.
me too.
Not a vehicle, but a truck, and I've also heard, primarily a white truck.
Maybe an F-150, maybe a F-250,
maybe a Chevy.
Maybe a van. I've heard a van.
Yeah, could be a creepy white van. Hashtag ban the van. T-shirts on sale at truecrimegarage.com. I ordered ban the van hoodies, and they're selling very slow. And I don't know if it's because the weather's getting warmer, or if people are just not supporting the band. I've had carpenters like call me or write me and say, "Hey, man, I'm a carpenter, and we all have white cargo vans, so leave us alone."
Yeah, leave us alone.
Man, I'm sorry. Just stop being so creepy. We're doing that next week, and
nice.
I mean, the problem with the Delphi thing is, sometimes Nick has something, sometimes I have something, and then sometimes we present it to each other to see, if it. We ultimately both have veto power. So if he came to me and said, I really have these thoughts about Delphi I want to put out there, that I have the ability to tell him no, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Which I've respect each other's.
Right, and I've had some stuff before on Delphi, which I'm glad that he's told me not to put out. Because then
it's good. Keep each other in check.
Yeah, I mean it's been interesting because since we were one of the first people to talk about it like nationwide, I was able to talk with Kelsey and talk with Becky, and not for a long extensive time, and we didn't like talk details and things like that, but it was just nice to have the family like tell you that they thought you mattered.
That is
and then to have that happen so many times over the last couple of years with them especially has been nice. Or sometimes I have been attacked, like I said, by people close to the case, but Kelsey has always been good about being very respectful. That's awesome. I try to be respectful to her and their family. So, but it's nice when it happens back.
Are you going to talk to them at CrimeCon? I know you.
I would like to, but I think the thing is just like sometimes when you have a lot of muddy information or speculative information,
Yeah, maybe just see how they're doing. Check in. Maybe not even go down any roads that way, but just to see how they're doing.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I'm sure you get this. Some of the episodes that you put out, like sometimes it's just like hatred that comes back, or like people. Like I don't think it's wrong to disagree. Me and you disagree on some thoughts about the press conference, and that's okay. I think that's what makes us better.
Yeah, like I said, I work with scientists, and if they team up with other scientists a lot, and someone you really like, what the best thing you could do for them is try your hardest to disprove their theory, and not do it publicly. You do it right behind the scenes, because it's like telling someone they got something in their teeth, right? You want to say, hey, no, look, here's a flaw in it. Before I go out with this information, I want someone else to argue against it and tell me that it's wrong. So when you have people that do that, you get a lot further in solutions.
Yeah, and Skip put out some really interesting information a couple weeks ago where he was talking about the hitchhiker. I kind of disagree on where the hitchhiker came from or where they went.
You son of a bitch.
Yeah.
I hate you.
Well, here's what I wonder is like, I really do think it was local, because once you get to the other side, you have to understand that a lot of that land is connected to private property. And obviously, if you're going to do what they did, you need a place to kind of to try to cover it up, just so you can escape the situation. So I think that the cemetery gets overlooked quite a bit, because if you've been there, you know.
I'm gonna let you think about if you want to talk about any of this. Comment. I could share my story about my experience with it, and then you could feel if you want to interject anything.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I listened to Murder Sheets when they had you on first. That was like, how many months ago was that? I know they just put it out on YouTube, but it came out on their podcast first.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably a couple of days after the Skip interview. So I mean,
was that recent? After, so it's years. Well,
about a year or more.
And I only listened to it because it had your name on it. I'm like, who's Murder Sheet? I'm like, what's Captain doing over here?
I was trying to make cookies.
So I don't know. You want to talk about any of that experience? I just heard them like, what? I don't know. It was like they were trying to shame you about saying names, and then they said a name. They're the first person on there. I'm like, wait, did you just say they said a name, and they're talking to you about not saying names? And I listened to your episodes with Skip, and I know it was just initials the whole time. Like I'm all, you know how I know that for a fact? Because I didn't know who this person was. So I was waiting to hear that name the whole time. Like, who are these initials?
Yeah.
And you guys never said. I'm like annoyed and like, oh, now how am I going to figure this out? So I know you guys never said by name.
Yeah, initially, somebody that I was looking into that was not on a lot of message boards. It's like if the mountain of circumstantial evidence I got was overwhelming. And so one day on a show, I basically said, like, instead of today's the day or your time is coming, I said the flood is coming. And the term flood was directed at this individual. Then his wife came out on social media and was blogging about this. Again, how he would know or anybody else would know that I was speaking to this individual, I just don't know how they'd know. So I think, but anyways, they wanted me to apologize to that guy, which I never said his name and I never even said his initials. And I worked on that for weeks upon weeks until I got a confirmation of his alibi. And then once I got that, I was like, okay, well, I can move forward. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I couldn't have waited for law enforcement to have cleared that individual for me, because there's probably not going to clear any individual until there is a charge.
Right. And I thought you were very clear on, you're like, all I'm saying is that if someone was there at around the time of a murder, everyone there should be a suspect. Like 100% until they're cleared.
So, well, so that's so that was the DP theory. So for the first guy, I never mentioned his name, never mentioned his initials. But when I was talking with Skip and investigating this angle, it became this whole thing where it's like, well, we have to call him something. And we started figuring out that if you followed his story and you followed this case, you would start figuring out his actual name. So we just decided to call him by his initials. So we did call him DP. But the theory is this simple. This guy was at that park that day. His story has changed. If your story has changed and it contradicts itself, therefore, by definition, it's a lie. So somebody that was there that is now lying and has changed their appearance and all this stuff, like, they should become a person of interest. Doesn't mean they weren't at some point. Doesn't mean they weren't heavily looked into. I mean, for all we know, before our show, he was cleared by cops, but they're just not going to release that information.
Right. Yeah, they could have did a DNA test and realize right the day after, like, nope, we have enough DNA to rule this person out. They're ruled out, and no one would know that they did that.
Well, and look, I would love to talk to him myself. One-on-one to see, look, maybe there's somebody in his life that could give me the answer that they were with him or not with him, and I could take him off the list and move on. But I don't plan on doing that anytime soon.
So I know that Murder Sheets, they put it on YouTube, your guys' interview, and I hear a lot of people defending you, and I was like, what? They did another interview? So it was the same one. I was confused that they just put on YouTube, but like, how'd they get you on? And are you guys like, was it cool? Was it a good experience, bad experience, anything? Or we don't have to talk about it, whatever.
Well, the reason why they got me to talk was they were pretty, it seemed like they were pretty disrespectful through the email and trying to ruffle my feathers. And I think that's when I was like, well, I'll just talk to him. Because I know where my heart is with this case. I mean, I'm a big guy, but this case has made me cry a bunch. So I think about those girls. I think about their friendship. I think about all the things that they weren't able to do, even like simple things like school dances and homecoming and little just dorky things that they didn't get to experience that in life,
Yeah, it's heartbreaking just thinking the moments before. I mean,
yeah, and if I knew somebody, and that's the other problem too, is like if I knew 100% the cops weren't doing something about it, like I don't know if I'd want to know, because then I think I'd question my conscience at that point, because maybe I'd take law into my own hands. I don't know.
Yeah, right. I'm sure some of the locals would do the same thing. And yeah, once this person's found out, it's not going to be pretty. That's why I think part of it's shocking. Why isn't anyone saying anything? Like a child murder? Is this person have people fooled? Are they not speaking on it? Like, how is this? Like in your experience, all these cases you cover, it usually seems like someone eventually says something. Or is that?
Well, the more people involved, the more likely somebody says something.
So if it was one person.
So after 1 year or after 5 years, you start thinking maybe it is just one individual.
Or family members, maybe? Or is it still, do you notice the family members turn on each other sometimes? I'm sure, but is it more?
Yeah, I mean, you've had some ruffling with family members already in this case. I mean, frustration. They obviously had frustration after 2 years of looking into the case. They come out and say, "Oh, different sketch."
Mm-hmm.
By the way, the guy looks completely different. You know what I mean? Like, figure that one out. Tell me why.
I'm still confused by that. Man, it's hurting my head because, all right, if it is the second sketch, young guy sketch is supposed to be Anthony Shots, like, why would you draw him with curly hair? Right. So there's that. I don't get that.
Yeah, but you have to remember they interviewed this sketch artist.
Mm-hmm.
I told you this came from, he says directly, this came from an eyewitness. It didn't come from a picture.
Right.
It came from
right.
an eyewitness. So
then you hear things like it was more than one witness, but when did the second witness come about? And is that what prompted the 2019? Was it they finally had a second person said, all right, I've been hiding, I didn't want to say this, but yeah, and they showed them different sketches like, yep, that's the one. And maybe that prompted the whole 2019. Who knows? Speculation.
yeah, or they identified one of the people. Because if I was at a park and you were at a park, some girls got murdered and you saw me, that doesn't mean I'm the killer. That just means you saw me, right? So then you go back and they draw a sketch of me. And then I come forward and say, yeah, I saw this killer guy. Well, what did he look like? Well, he was 10 feet tall, right? You know what I mean? And they go, well, you look like the sketch. And then they figure out that you saw me and not Bridge Guy. So I think that's possibly what it was some of the eyewitnesses saw something or somebody, but that person necessarily wasn't Bridge Guy.
Yeah, and then what took till 2019? Like, what they had to learn something, you would think, or it's
You have
just
to remember that they said that there was over 100 federal agents. Sometimes there's just too many cooks in the kitchen. You're gonna lose out on detail. The amount of knowledge you're gonna be able to do is collect would be more massive, but the details are going to get foggy.
Yeah, and part of it, my thought was after GBI came in 2018, maybe like, all right, we're out of things. Let's try a new direction because this old Bridge Guy sketch, looking for someone in their 40s to 50s, it's not leading to anything. We got to shake it up. So why not shake it up? And yeah, you got to interview John Douglas. And I guess I could have asked you permission before, but screw it. I said True Crime Garage in the description. I use your logo. I'm like, it's all good. Whatever. You can sue me for nothing. But the clip when you had John Douglas on. What's that?
$1 million. I only sue people for millions of dollars.
We'll get my school debt. I still have that for my master's. So yeah, you could take that on as part of it. Yeah. Just so, yeah.
Where did you get your degree at?
I got it in California at Orange, Southern California.
Yeah, you should probably ask for your money back.
Yeah, I guess so.
I'm just joking.
Yeah, so the sketches are just mind-boggling. I was talking to someone about them earlier today. So it's all like part of it is they should come out and clear it up. If they really want the public's help for identifying it, then you'd kind of want to clear it. If you're asking for help, you would want it clear on what you're looking for.
But do you think they need it now?
No, because they don't bring it up anymore. Like, when's the last time they've put out a sketch? Yeah, it's sitting on a website, and yeah, they took out their description and height and weight, but you don't see it at press conferences or anything anymore. That's always interesting. Well, the stomach reference is important. So that we're talking about that on the phone, huh? About the stomach stuff with TK.
Well, I mean, it's like, see, I get emails like this, and I'm like, I don't know what they want me to say. Like, my first thought is, the first simplest answer is possibly. Mm-hmm. The stomach reference is, maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the thing is we don't know anything. The stomach searches, we don't know what happened at the crime scene, so we don't know if that.
True. Yeah, Carter says not to look at the face, so that's
not
true.
The face, not the face. Well, I think. Okay, I actually think that there's something wrong with Bridge Guy's left leg. Not like maybe that, like not like he has a broken leg or a sprained ankle or anything. I think he had surgery on his leg. Maybe teared like an ACL. There's something, and then he's overcompensating for his right leg. So he kind of like swings that left leg a little bit, but it's like in the video how the leg is coming over.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, this way, right? The leg is coming over.
Yeah.
His right leg, when you see his right leg, it comes over almost to the center of his stepping path. Some people think that he's stumbling or anything. I think he's stepping into the middle of his path to overcompensate for whatever has happened, ankle injury, mm-hmm. foot injury. But it's like a long-term injury.
Yeah, it could be.
He's not in pain by it, but there's a long-term.
So that makes you think he's a little older then, or?
I would like to know what his sports history was in high school. I mean, one of the guys I was looking into played up until senior year.
Yeah, and like, do
So
people know?
why didn't he play his senior year? Did he get hurt?
And you call places, huh? I've heard you say it in other public, so I won't feel like you don't mess around. You straight call and verify things. I don't know if a lot of people do that. I sure don't. I'm like, nope, not doing that. But you straight call and you look into alibis by calling the actual place. You would call, I don't know, a library, a hospital, an appointment. Like you get in there.
Yeah, and at first I'd tell people I'm a private investigator, and then I found out that's illegal.
To tell people that?
Yeah, unless you actually are certified. So then I started doing all this stuff to get my certification, and then I thought, well, what does it matter? Because I don't know if I want to be a private investigator. But now I just tell them who I am. I normally don't say I have a podcast or anything, but mainly because now I would if I thought that we're going to gather information and do another episode. But since I don't know where that information is going to go, I just come in as myself. But yeah, what drives me nuts about armchair detectives or like people doing YouTube videos or podcasts, and they will speculate by something, and you just go, well, why don't you just pick up the damn phone and call, you know?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to call you so you call them because you're braver than me. Be like, I'll just use reverse psychology on you. Like, you won't call them. You're like, yes, I will, Fig. Don't make me. That's it.
Yeah. People should call more often. But calling can get you into trouble. The first guy I was really looking into hard, the first place that they told me whose alibi was, I called and I asked if they were open in 2017, and they told me they weren't. So I was like, shit. He's saying he was there. Well, they weren't open. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then once I couldn't like get past certain points, I started calling back to that place. Like maybe they just gave me shitty information. And then later they told me the truth. Oh yeah, you know, you know what I mean? Like they said, oh, we were open. We were open at that time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, wait, shit. I went down this whole rabbit hole, and if they would have just told me the answer correctly the first time, I would have crossed them off the list and moved to the next person.
Would have wasted so much time. Yeah, that's what rabbit holes are good for.
And I wasted so much time. Probably a month.
So some of that stuff is good to kind of have a behind the scenes network of people, you know. Well, that way you could save them time. Like, hey, I went down this. Don't even waste your time. Like, look at these other things. Here's some interesting points. Or yeah, don't go down this path. I went down it. It's wrong. So to help people save time, it's helpful. Oh, got some. All right. We're gonna wrap it up here pretty soon. Maybe just a few more minutes. If anyone has any questions for the captain, go ahead and shoot them now. So we'll kind of give a minute. What's so CrimeCon is this weekend? Next weekend?
Next weekend.
Next weekend.
28th through the 1st, I believe.
What's like your most favorite thing to do there? Just to interact with people or
walk around? I actually enjoy it's funny because I think if you listen to the show, you would assume that you would want to have a beer with me and you would want to talk about cases with Nick. And the truth is, once Nick starts drinking, he doesn't really care to talk about cases or to really hear anybody's opinions. Not that he's rude. He just, that's just the way he is. Where I'm probably more interested in hearing people's thoughts on cases than I am getting drunk. So we like switch roles for that weekend.
No way. So he just kind of loosens up there, just like, take a break.
Well, he's the party animal.
Is he now?
Oh yeah, like man, I'll be like working at 7:00 at night, and I'll call him to get some information. And because we're partners and we're like, it's also a business. Like we try to have these rules of like, try to answer the phone, and I will try to only call when it's of importance. But most of the time when I call him, like on a Friday night or a Thursday night, he's at a bar somewhere, and I'm at home doing work. So
that's funny.
Figure that one out.
Yeah, sometimes it gets heavy where you might need to just go get a beer, huh? Just like take a breather from it.
Yeah, I think he's good at that. I mean, I think he's really good at that kind of motto of work hard, play hard. And I'm more like work hard than rest easy, you know. Like I'm not one to go to bars too often and stuff like that.
Right.
But I also used to work in bars all the time when I was a kid, so kind of over. To me, it's like work to go to a bar.
Yeah, it's too much. I'm just getting older now. I'm like, just chill at home.
I think a lot of the stuff that you've been uncovering lately, once you figure out how to sift through it and to figure out what you want to put out, I think it's gonna. And I think that's the difficult reason why I don't want to talk about some stuff is I don't know how much I want to confuse or muddy the waters, you know, because I'm not solid on any of these thoughts that I have right now, with especially a lot of the stuff that me and you talked about. I mean, I can tell you what the pendulum is, or what some initial opinions, or sharing it, you know, with my father, which has always been great, you know, to have a father that was a detective and worked in law enforcement, you know, to bounce off ideas from.
So. For sure. Yeah. I don't know. We'll talk offline. I don't want to share anything. I think we got a lot to think about because if you're wrong, is it worth it? And it's like, what's the risk reward analysis? Putting this out, what is the reward? It's not rewarding for me. I'm not gonna be rewarding for you. It just, hey, does someone want to hear some rumors that are not verified? Like, what is that? Doesn't do anything. Now,
there's people that have done that on their channel, you know. But again, I think the best thing that you can do is just do what's in your heart and what you believe in, and like, you know, if there's an afterlife, like I can live with myself, I can sleep at night. Like if there's this afterlife that I think Abby and Libby would at least be like, hey, thank you for trying, you know. I'd hope that that's what they'd say, or, you know, that they think I'm the greatest true crime podcast host of all time is what I really wish they would. But no, and it's like, and then also, like, I don't know, like there's been a couple episodes that we've talked about it where I didn't think the information was really that relevant to the actual Delphi case. But I will always be proud of it was this little case that nobody's really heard of, and I was also proud of Nick, because Nick didn't originally want to talk about it because he's like, well, there's not a lot of information. And that's when I was like, look, it's more important that we get this out than, you know, and I hate the media they rush to get something out where they're like, it's better to be first than to be right. But in this case, it was like, no. It's better. We're going to be right about the sketch. We're going to be right about the photograph. We're going to be right about the audio clips. We're going to be right about the ages of the girls. We're going to be right about the location. I mean, the location, I think, plays a huge part in this case. And it's like when they say this person was local, again, what's their definition of local? You know, was it a 10-minute radius, 20-minute radius, 30-mile radius, 40-mile radius? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. How well did this person know the ins and outs of this park? I think that matters.
Yeah. And then me just goofing off on Google Earth or Google Maps, you can learn a lot from a layout. It's not the same as being there, but that's what like Israel Keys would do, right? To kind of scope out a place. So like if you go on Google Earth and then you go visit that place the week before and kind of walk around, figure out some routes. And that's why it's confusing too, where you could learn a lot through Google Maps and through a friend.
Yeah, I mean, well, one of the suspects that I got onto pretty early was, Google. It was a Google map search, and I just wanted to see roughly how far their house was from the crime scene. And it was so close, I was like, shit, this person should be looked at. Now, anybody in their right mind that tells me that that person shouldn't be looked at, use dumb, use dumb head, That's why I like to say you've been eating too much pork chops and you're just, you're just dumb as shit, boy. You know. No, but it's just also like in a case like this. And I don't want to try to throw anybody under the bus, but I think there was some discrepancies early on with Kelsey's story. So law enforcement then has to really look at her. You're going to fault them for really looking at her? You know what I mean?
Right. I know it seems so ridiculous now, but if you go back to the beginning of a case and then you look at statistics, how many times is it a family member? You know way more cases than me, but right, they always start there.
Yeah.
That's my friend's the chief of police, and he says that's where you always start. You start from the crime scene. Who's had contact the last 24 hours? You start with the family, and who has this person been in contact? And you look at the radius around the crime scene. It's 101.
Yeah, and because this case isn't solved, we might find ourselves seeing some connection from the murderer to the family.
How do you mean?
Well, if he's local, there's definitely a connection anyways, at least an acquaintance level connection.
Right.
Under 5,000 people. Do you know how freaking small that is?
Right. I think there's more people who worked at the Subaru factory or Chrysler, one of those companies that there are in Delphi.
Yeah, so I would say that there's probably is some connection. Also, look, the family has been protective, law enforcement's been protective, and the media has been protective of Derek. You have a drug user, possible drug dealer, connection to bad people. Like I said, when you hang out with bad people long enough, bad shit happens. And I think that's been strategic on why they haven't talked much about him. And what happens if you find out that this person if they're connected to anybody in the family, it's more likely they're connected to Derek. And I think that statistically, that leap wouldn't seem that far. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Just
I'm
looking
not-
objectively, not
Yeah.
subjectively, not with feelings, but just like it's unfortunate. It's sad that the statistics show that.
But then people have to remember too, because some people are like, well, you can't trust that family because they're just like not coming out and saying stuff. They're just not giving us a bunch of information. It's like they do not have to answer to you.
Right. To the public.
Because you're fascinated with a case that their child was murdered, they owe nothing to you.
100%.
Nothing to you. And if anything, that we should try to protect them as much as we would try to protect those two girls, because 100%. Just think, look, and Anne, is it wrong that they've protected Derek? I guarantee you, anybody that's been connected to Derek that they thought was a suspicious person, I guarantee you they've told law enforcement about. Mm-hmm. Because at that point, that guy's feelings that they're suspicious about don't matter to how much their heart is broken.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, they don't owe anyone anything. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up if that's good with you. Any last statements you want to say to anyone?
I'm hopeful that we hear something soon. And again, I'm always hopeful that today's the day. I do believe they're closer, and I think we have a window. We got a two-year window to count down. So, but I hope it's sooner than that.
Agreed. Let today be the day. So, yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks, Captain, for coming on, and check out True Crime Garage, and make sure if you're at CrimeCon, you can say hi and buy Captain a beer. I don't know if Nick would want. He'd already have probably enough beers where maybe don't buy him a beer.
Nobody wants to buy him a beer.
Yeah.
He has a bad attitude. But yeah. Thanks for bugging me to death to come on. The best is I was like, wait, we haven't even set up a time, and the bastard's sending me questions.
Yeah, I said this morning, I'm like, all right, here's the questions. Ready for today? I'm all cleared my schedule today, so
you are too due diligent. But well, no, I always, and I haven't caught all of them, but I enjoy your talks with Sleuth Intuition and you sharing information with Skip and all the connection, because it's also nice when somebody reaches out and says, hey, this person wants to talk to you, and then I talk to other individuals and they all have good things to say about you as a person and your character. So and you know, I mean other than being a USC fan, in Michigan, really?
Well, when I was little, I liked Wolverine, like X-Men. So I'm like, I didn't know college football. I was an NFL fan. So that is
the dumbest reason.
Yeah, it was a childish reason for sure.
Because you're not from Michigan.
I'm not a Michigan fan. I don't like say I'm a Michigan fan, but just because I saw your Ohio State, I'm like,
you're going to try to rub your
had to a little bit.
Well, I really appreciate your shit talking.
Ditto. Same.
Did you guys hear about the Captain Fig? They just talked shit for 2 hours.
We're mild. It's different when we're on the phone. This was very mild. I'm proud of us. I think we did a good job of not saying everything that we wanted to say or how we normally talk. Things we say on the phone, it should not be repeated.
Oh yeah, well, we're going nuts, but also some of that is like, like we're saying, was going through that that thought process of, okay, here's this information. Does it mean anything or does it mean nothing? And especially some of the far-fetched stuff, you feel more safe to talk about it in that space. I would not feel comfortable with some of the really dark or deep rumors to discuss those publicly.
No, like someone else could do that. It's not me. Until I know it's a fact, I'm not touching them.
Yeah.
So,
well, good, man. It's good talking to you.
Nice talking to you. Chat later. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Adios.